Breaking today. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle accused of leaking highly sensitive information about a private meeting with Buckingham Palace and representatives for King Charles, unbelievably, to the Mail on Sunday's editor-at-large Charlotte Griffiths, the same woman who Prince Harry was trying to destroy in court. Charlotte Griffiths has made these revelations in an astonishing new front page article for today's Daily Mail, where she also reveals Prince Harry's latest drug shame, which involved pulling out some type of pill. She claims it may have been paracetamol, putting it on her tongue and saying, "Now I know I can trust you." This, by the way, was within seconds of meeting the then 27-year-old newspaper journalist. So Harry is in deep trouble on a whole load of matters. And he knows, because yesterday he tried to blame, and this was the GB News spin, he tried to blame soaring London temperatures and a heat wave as the reason why he snuck into the Chelsea hospital and was not pictured at all. Today he has broken cover, visiting the Birmingham Children's Hospital, where he is patron of the charity Well Child. He looked emotional as he hugged a nurse and engaged with the children. But of course, guess who hasn't showed up to support him? That ever-loving wife, Meghan Markle, who any time the shit hits the proverbial, hits the fan, seems to disappear. Of course, the big event happens at the Invictus 1 year to go countdown. If Meghan Markle leaves Prince Harry to do that on his own, I think you'll know there are now even more troubles within this marriage. But let me get to this astonishing revelation from Charlotte Griffiths, that this meeting, and it was a highly significant moment because it was a meeting between Tobin Andre, who is the King's most senior royal courtier on the communications side of things. Full disclosure, he actually used to be my boss when I worked at the Daily Mail, but he is an old Etonian and very, very close to the King. And he had this secret meeting, which was pictured by the Mail on Sunday, with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's then senior staff members, Meredith Maines and Liam Maguire, at a private members club close to Buckingham Palace. And everyone wanted to know, how on earth did they get these pictures? Who was leaking this sensitive information? And given that the information was leaked to Charlotte Griffiths, the thinking was, well, it couldn't be from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle because they're suing the woman. But Charlotte in the Daily Mail today has revealed that is indeed what happened. She wrote, "What is even more galling, given David Sherborne, that's Prince Harry's slippery lawyer, and his line of attack, is that in the months leading up to my court appearance, Harry's circle had been very leaky indeed. I can now reveal that during the summer of 2025, a close advisor to Harry and Meghan had contacted me out of the blue and invited me to lunch at the Ivy restaurant in London. As a result of information given to me at that lunch meeting, I placed a series of stories in the Mail on Sunday that portrayed the couple in a positive light. This included a front page article which ran in July, suggesting that Harry and Meghan were attempting to rebuild their relationship with King Charles. It revolved around the fact that Liam Maguire and Meredith Maines, Harry and Meghan's USPR chiefs, were to hold clear the air talks with the monarch's aide, Tobin Andre, in London. I was duly tipped off about the meeting, which was held at the Royal Overseas League near Clarence House. The attendees settled themselves on a balcony plainly visible from the public park below. The Mail on Sunday arranged for a photographer to capture the cosy but very embarrassing scene. In a development which speaks volumes for their integrity, sources close to the Sussexes then briefed the Daily Telegraph that they were very frustrated that the pictures of the Royal Overseas League gathering had ended up in the Mail on Sunday, suggesting, quite falsely, that the palace was responsible for a grotesque betrayal of trust. Now, just 6 months later, the prince was impugning my integrity while swearing that his people never leaked and that stories that ended up in my newspaper must have been obtained illegally. Rafe Hadel-Manku is a royal historian and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Oh my God, Rafe, this is actually so serious now, because, you know, all of the talk all along in terms of this sort of rapprochement between Harry and King Charles has been based on an understanding that it must stay confidential, Rafe, that he must not continue to leak information. Now, I have reported, Rafe, time and again that he can't do that. Like when he met Charles at Clarence House, information was immediately leaked into the US media. So I've always said Harry's never going to be able to do that. But we now have categorical proof that he leaked this critical meeting, that he and Meghan leaked this critical meeting to the Mail on Sunday and Charlotte Griffiths, a journalist who at the same time they were suing, which is not only totally twisted, it's totally bizarre, but then they lied about it, Rafe, and tried to blame King Charles. So I just put it to you, Rafe, that surely enough is enough now. And if the king, and I know you hate criticizing the king, but he can't go through, Rafe, with a meeting with Harry this week. He just cannot. Want the real story behind the headlines? Subscribe to Dan Wootton Outspoken for daily updates you won't get anywhere else. Join us today. It's free.
Well, look, I mean, yeah, I think it's quite clear. This is extremely serious. I mean, they once again expose themselves as immense hypocrites. You wonder whether this is something pathological, that Prince Harry simply can't stop himself, or is it Meghan saying that this is what we must do? I mean, you know, I've been to the Royal Overseas League many times. It's the balcony where you sit on there. It's a huge place. That's the only place where you can really be seen by the public. So who was it who decided to sit out on that tiny balcony when there are so many other places to sit for the first thing? Look, trust has been completely destroyed between Harry and his family. There was an attempt, a very magnanimous gesture by the king to extend an olive branch by inviting him to stay at Buckingham Palace. That, of course, we all know what happened there, where Harry replied too late, and then he declined, and then changed his mind. And all that became public as well, of course, in a very unfair way, with the Sussexes claiming that they had their invitation withdrawn, which wasn't true. So it's already been damaged. That attempt at rapprochement has already been set back, and now you get these revelations. I mean, it seems to me as if they are as far apart as ever, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if certainly the Prince of Wales was advising his father along similar lines and saying, well, look, he clearly, for all of the talk he has about wanting to reconcile with his family, he's actually shown no real, true, deep down conviction that that's what he wants to do.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Rafe. I mean, seriously, the fact that he will actually work with newspapers and leak private information to newspapers who, at the same time he is trying to destroy and trying to make out to the public, are so morally reprehensible that they should not even be in business, proves to me, once again, and you know that I've been very hot on this for a number of years, that Harry and Meghan, you cannot trust a word that they say, because they will say one thing in public, Rafe, when it suits them politically, but then act in a completely different way behind the scenes. What's most extraordinary today, Rafe, is that we did get the briefings to the newspapers, which I still think give Harry and his team far too much credence in terms of how he is going to cope with this court loss. And I do think it is just worth reminding everyone, Rafe, this is like not just a normal, this is not like, oh, you lost a case. Harry had made this his life's mission, okay? And it wasn't like a split decision. It was a total thumping by Justice Nicklin. But yet he's briefing to the Daily Telegraph that he just thinks that he can keep calm and carry on and focus on his charity work now, which to me just feels totally, totally delusional. But the Daily Telegraph's Victoria Ward, who is their deputy royal editor and is the person who gets all of the contact from Harry and Meghan's team, says that he does plan to do just that. A bullish Prince Harry has just pledged to put the defeat behind him and shift his focus to his charity work. They report that the Duke has not discussed whether to appeal the verdict with David Sherborne, his barrister, and is not expected to have any further contact with him this week. One source said he was determined not to let the ruling further overshadow his charity engagements. He was unlikely to spend any more time assessing his next steps until he returned home. The Duke has 21 days to ask the court for permission to appeal, So there is plenty of time for him to sit down and absorb it all when this week's work is behind him. Plans to deliver a victory statement, which were being thrashed out right up until the ruling was made public, were swiftly shelved. The plan to have both print and broadcast media at an Invictus engagement that took place at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea, on Wednesday had already been abandoned. The Duke was originally expected to be joined by his wife, the Duchess of Sussex, for private meetings and a reception involving Chelsea pensioners before he decided it was unsafe for her and the children to travel to London without any police protection. The visit was also due to be covered by the media, but at lunchtime on Tuesday, the plan changed. A source insisted it was because of the extreme heat forecast and the lack of shade in the hospital grounds, which meant the public element of the job, meeting veterans, had to be shelved. In the event, the Duke attended a series of private meetings before joining a strategy session with former Invictus Games hosts and partners. There were no reporters present and just an Invictus photographer to capture the moment for posterity. Today, he was back in the public eye, of course, and then on Friday, he will be met with a gaggle of photographers, an event marking the one-year countdown to next year's Invictus Games. But Rafe, in all seriousness, the only question that I am hearing asked now with people involved in the Invictus Games is for how long Prince Harry can actually even be connected to this organisation that, yes, he did found, but he founded it when he was a member of the royal family. And his constant terrible headlines are actually now posing a reputational threat to this charity.
Yeah, and of course, he's lost association with so many other of the foundations and projects that he launched. They've all fallen around him in tatters, and this is all that he has left. And, you know, he's clinging to it as if it's a life buoy, because it's essentially the only thing keeping him and keeping his reputation afloat. I mean, let's be clear here. He has suffered the most devastating of defeats, an immense humiliation at the hands of the British legal system. It must be gnawing at him. He's putting on a brave face because his PR team have told him to put on a brave face. But you can bet your bottom dollar that media presence would have been there at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea, if he had won that case. He would have been smiling like a Cheshire cat.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of,
yeah. And that's why he wanted to stay in Buckingham Palace, Rafe. I find that so despicable. He actually wanted to deliver his victory statement or film something from within Buckingham Palace. I mean, that is just so bad. Rafe, can I ask you what you think about Meghan's disappearing act, though? Because the one thing that you will say about Prince Harry is that he is always there for that woman, no matter what terrible thing she does. I mean, I think of the example of her giving, this moment. Do you remember that when she sort of mocked her curtsy to the late Queen, and Harry just had to sit there and shut up, and he was clearly horrified, but it's, you know, he sort of supports his wife through all of these things. And yet, Rafe, have you noticed that any time the chips are down and that he's in deep trouble or he's being criticised, she makes herself scarce? And look, she may well fly in overnight because, remember, they have to do this Althorpe filming at Althorpe for a documentary that they've got planned about the 30th anniversary of Princess Diana's death. But I would argue, Rafe, that she needed to be there for him earlier this week, because this is a man who has just suffered a defeat which is really going to change the course of his life. That is how significant, in my view, the defeat that by the Daily Mail was. It was so consequential, and she's just not there, Rafe. What do you think that says about her?
Well, she's a fair weather wife, isn't she?
She's
only there for the good days. She's only there when the sun is shining. When the clouds form, she rushes off. You know, her California character can't deal with cloudy skies. But I'll go back to that in a moment. But can you imagine? Because when he lost that case, he attacked the judges. He attacked his father's judges. It's the king's law, and he undermined the rule of law by calling it a whitewash. Imagine if he had said that from within Buckingham Palace. Let's just put that. Oh my
God, I know. No, but it's such an important point. I keep thinking about that because it's the king's court that he and Rafe, and again, just before we get back to the Meghan thing, that is why I think he can no longer be a counsellor of state. I know that you think he should stay in the line of succession, but like a counsellor of state, tell me if I'm wrong, Rafe, because you're the expert on this stuff, but a counsellor of state is there to effectively sign off laws and, you know, do official duties on behalf of the king if the king is incapacitated in some way. So how on earth can you have someone as a Counselor of State who is criticizing the king?
A fresh report has reignited debate over Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's relationship with Buckingham Palace, raising new questions about trust, media strategy, and the future of any reconciliation with the royal family. The latest controversy stems from an article published by Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. In her report, Griffiths alleges that members of the Sussexes team provided her with advance information about a confidential meeting involving representatives of Prince Harry and King Charles. The claims have become particularly notable because Griffiths was simultaneously involved in legal proceedings connected to Prince Harry's wider campaign against sections of the British press. According to Griffiths, during the summer of 2025, she was contacted unexpectedly by a close advisor to Harry and Meghan and invited to lunch at London's Ivy restaurant. She says that information shared during that meeting enabled the Mail on Sunday to publish several stories portraying the couple positively, including a prominent report suggesting efforts were underway to rebuild relations between Prince Harry and King Charles. At the center of those reports was an important meeting between senior communications representatives from both sides. Harry and Meghan's advisors, Meredith Maines and Liam Maguire, reportedly met with Tobin Andrea, King Charles's communications secretary, at the Royal Overseas League near Clarence House. The meeting attracted enormous public attention after photographers captured images of those attending while they sat on a balcony visible from a nearby public area. At the time, speculation surrounded how journalists had learned about the supposedly private gathering. Griffiths now claims that the Sussex camp itself alerted her to the meeting beforehand. She further alleges that after the photographs appeared, sources close to Harry and Meghan privately suggested that Buckingham Palace had been responsible for the leak, an accusation that, if Griffiths' account is accurate, would present a very different picture of what actually happened. These allegations arrive against the backdrop of Prince Harry's long-running legal campaign against several British newspaper groups. Throughout those cases, Harry has consistently argued that sections of the media have relied on unlawful methods and invasions of privacy to obtain stories about him and his family. Critics now argue that if members of his own circle were voluntarily briefing journalists, it could undermine the consistency of that public message. Supporters of the Duke, however, may point out that media engagement by staff and allegations of unlawful information gathering are separate issues and should not be confused. The timing is especially significant because Prince Harry recently suffered a major legal defeat in one of his high-profile court battles. The ruling represented another setback in his years-long effort to challenge the practices of British tabloid press. Following the judgment, reports suggested Harry intended to shift his attention back to charitable work rather than focus immediately on a possible appeal. Although he still has time to seek permission to appeal, sources quoted in British newspapers claimed he plans to prioritize existing engagements before making any decisions about his legal options. One of those engagements included a visit to Birmingham Children's Hospital in support of Well Child, the charity of which he remains patron. During the visit, Harry met children, healthcare workers, and families while continuing his public charitable commitments despite the difficult week. Attention has also focused on Meghan Markle's absence from recent UK events. Commentators have questioned why she has not accompanied Harry during this challenging period, particularly given the significance of his recent court loss. Others note that the Duchess has largely remained based in California since stepping back from royal duties, making separate travel arrangements unsurprising. Speculation has also surrounded the upcoming Invictus Games countdown events. Founded by Prince Harry in 2014, the Invictus Games remain one of his most significant charitable achievements and continue to be closely associated with his public identity. Some royal commentators have suggested that Harry's continuing controversies could eventually become a reputational challenge for the organization. Others argue that the Games have developed into an independent international sporting movement whose focus should remain on wounded service personnel rather than royal headlines. The broader issue raised by the latest allegations concerns trust between Prince Harry and the royal family. Ever since Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020, relations with Buckingham Palace have experienced repeated periods of tension. Interviews, documentaries, memoirs, legal disputes, and public statements have all contributed to a relationship many observers describe as deeply fractured. If confidential discussions intended to rebuild those relationships were indeed disclosed to journalists by individuals connected to the Sussexes, critics argue it could make future private negotiations considerably more difficult. Others caution that many details surrounding palace communications remain confidential, and only limited information is publicly available. Without independent verification of every claim, some aspects of the story remain matters of competing accounts rather than established fact. The debate has also expanded beyond the royal family itself to questions about the British media. Supporters of Prince Harry maintain that his legal actions have highlighted genuine concerns about privacy and journalistic ethics. They argue that greater accountability remains necessary within parts of the British press. Meanwhile, opponents contend that a free press plays a vital role in holding powerful figures accountable, including members of the royal family. They argue that investigative journalism should not be weakened through increased regulation, pointing to historical examples where newspapers exposed stories of significant public interest. For Prince Harry personally, the coming weeks may prove pivotal. He must decide whether to continue pursuing further legal appeals while balancing ongoing charitable responsibilities and maintaining his public role through organizations like WellChild and the Invictus Games. At the same time, questions surrounding any future reconciliation with King Charles continue to dominate royal commentary. Rebuilding trust after years of public disagreements, media battles, and conflicting narratives remains a significant challenge for all involved. Whether the latest allegations ultimately change public perceptions will depend on what further evidence emerges and how both Buckingham Palace and the Sussexes respond. Until then, the story serves as another chapter and one of the most closely watched royal disputes of the modern era, one in which legal battles, media strategy, family relationships, and public opinion continue to intersect.